Hey everybody, it's Midwest Scotsman, and today I will be showing you how to make a sourdough boule with some rye flour for some extra flavor. Making bread at home can be as easy or complicated as you make it, but hopefully you take the leap because homemade bread has a flavor you'll never get with store-bought preservative-filled junk. I have everything I need to make this bread already measured out. I measure everything by weight as it's more accurate. For example, a cup of flour can have varying amounts depending on if you pack it or not. So I use a kitchen scale. You can get a cheap one like this at just about any supermarket. I'll give the amounts by volume as well, just in case. So to start off with, I have 57 grams of hot water, which is about a quarter cup. It's about 105 to 110 degrees. 3/4 of a teaspoon of active dry yeast. 675 grams of all-purpose flour, which is about 4 3/4 cups. 130 grams of dark rye flour. It's about a cup. 18 grams of kosher salt, which is about 2 tablespoons. 210 grams or so of a firm sourdough starter that I made. It's about a cup. I'm going to do a video soon on how to create the starter. And last but not least, off to the side, I've got 550 grams of cool water, which is about room temp, and that's about 2.5 cups. So the first thing to do is, in the bowl with the hot water, just pour in the yeast, and then stir that around with a fork just to get it mixed up. And then just set that aside for a couple minutes, let the yeast do its work. And while that's doing that, I'm going to take the all-purpose flour and I'm going to mix in the rye flour and the salt. And then just whisk that together a little bit. Get it all mixed together. So set that aside. And I will pause this real quick while we wait for the yeast in the water to do its thing. Alright, so it's been about 3 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the bowl with the cool water in it, and then I'm going to add the yeast mixture into that, trying to get as much of it as you can, and then I'm going to add the sourdough starter. I put on some gloves because this part can start getting a little messy. So now that I've got the starter in there, I'm just going to reach in there with my fingers, kind of try to break up that starter a little bit so it gets mixed in really well in there. You don't want big clumps of it inside your bread. Alright, so it feels like there's no big clumps left. I'm going to take the flour mixture and I'm going to also dump that in there. This is where it gets really sticky. So I'm also going to make sure the outside of the gloves are wet. That can help reduce some of the stickiness. And then I'm just going to start folding it around to get it all the dry ingredients mixed in with the wet. Trying just to use my fingertips to reduce the amount of dough that gets stuck to everything. And you just kind of try and scrape the sides to get as much of that flour in there as possible. And the bottom. See what I mean about it being quite sticky. Get as much of it off and back in the bowl as I can. And then I'm going to switch out my gloves. Alright, so I took the dough, put it out on a floured board, and I'm going to start working it. Basically, you just want to start kneading the dough. It's going to be really sticky at the start, but the gloves help. You know, you may need to use a bench scraper if it starts sticking, and then you just throw a little bit more flour on it. Keep working the dough. It'll get less sticky as time goes on. And you want to do this for about 6 to 7 minutes. So I'll do that now. I'll pause the video and I'll do that now. You want to just keep turning the dough, fold it over, press it down. You may want to do this every once in a while, get some of the dough off, throw some more flour on. But I'll pause the video now and I'll restart when I'm almost done. Alright, so I've been kneading it for, I don't know, about 6-7 minutes. And it's much more elastic now and much less sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to form it into a ball. Like that. I'm going to take the bowl, give it a shot of a little cooking spray. Plunk the dough in there, covered it with some plastic wrap. And let it sit for about 20 minutes. So I'll be back in 20. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes. You can see bread's risen a little bit, not much, but we're going to turn it out again onto a floured board. This time we're only going to knead it for just a couple minutes just to really develop the gluten. As you can see, it's much more elastic, not really sticky at all. I don't need the gloves anymore. Get a nice workout doing this too, which is always a good thing. Alright, so I've done it for about 2 minutes. Then I'm going to form it into a nice little ball. A can another shot of cooking spray. And plop it back down in there. At this point I usually put a little cooking spray on the top of the loaf too, just in case it rises enough to touch the plastic wrap. And now you just want to set it in the warmest spot in your kitchen, like on the stove or whatever, and let it sit for about an hour. And when that's done, I'll be back. Alright, as you can see, it's been just about an hour. You can see it's risen pretty good. It's getting towards the top of the bowl. So you want to turn the dough inside the bowl at this point. So basically you just want to take your fingers, you want to push down in the center, kind of deflate it, Then you want to take each side, fold it over, the other side, fold it over, and then from top to bottom, you want to fold it and then readjust it so that the seam is on the bottom. Again, put a little cooking spray on it in the top just in case. Put the cover back over it. And then you want to again set it in a warm spot in your kitchen for about an hour, maybe a little over. You're basically looking for it to almost double in volume. And I know at this point you're probably saying, man, we're several hours into this. This is taking a long time. Well, making bread is a labor of love. When you have that first bite, you're going to know why you did it. It's a lot harder than going down to the store and grabbing a loaf, but it's a lot better. So we'll see you back in about a little over an hour. Alright, so it's been about an hour that the bread's been rising. So now it's time to shape the loaves. I'm using a baker's cloth, which has got a liberal coating of flour on it. It's in half a sheet pan, but you could easily use parchment paper dusted with flour. So that's where I'll be putting the bread after I shape the loaves. So, as you can see, the bread's risen quite a bit. So I'm going to flour my work surface. And then I'm going to turn the dough out onto that surface. And I'm going to use my dough scraper. And I'm going to cut this in half to make two loaves. Put one off to the side. And basically you just want to, as gently as possible, start forming it into a boule. I usually take one corner like that, one corner like that, fold it over, and then just kind of start rolling it. Give it a little flour on the top. You want a nice smooth ball with no tears. And then I'll take it and move it over to the take the other one. Fold it over. See there on the cloth there, and then you want to either cover them with plastic wrap, or I can cover it with the cloth, which is dusted with flour on the other side as well. And then you want to let it rise for another 1 to 2 hours. You want it to almost double in size. So while that is rising, we'll take a break, and I will see you when the dough is risen. Alright, so the bread's been rising for a while. While that's been going on, I preheated my oven to 450. In my oven, I have some baking stones inside the oven. And then underneath, resting right on the floor of the oven, I have an old cast iron pan, which I'll be using to create some steam. And then I've got a tea kettle here with some water in it that I'll be using to pour into that pan. About 5 minutes before the loaves are going to go into the oven, I'm going to just turn this water on to boil and get it ready. And I dropped a few ice cubes into the pan just to create some steam before I put it in. So I'm going to be using a baking peel to slide the loaves into the oven. You can easily slide them from the parchment paper onto the baking stone if you're using one, or if you don't have a baking stone, you can just slide a sheet pan in the oven. So I put some semolina flour on here just to assist the sliding the dough into the oven. So I've got one of the loaves here on the peel, and I'm going to use a bread lame, which is a fancy way of staying a razor blade on a stick, and I'm just going to use it to cut some slashes into the dough. And a little deep there. That gets it, so that'll allow the bread to expand in the oven and allow some of the steam to escape and everything. So when it's ready to go in the oven, it'll be a couple minutes for the water to boil, so I'll be right back when that's ready. As you can see, they're in the oven now, and I've got 1 cup of boiling water, which I pour onto the... You want to do them at about 450 for 20 minutes, and then another 20-25 minutes at 400 degrees. And keep an eye on them at the end, make sure they don't burn. So this is what the loaves look like after you take them out of the oven. You want to transfer them to a rack, let them cool before serving. And I hope you enjoy the bread if you make it. Hope you enjoyed my first video on bread making. Till the next time, this is Midwest Scotsman.